Hi everyone, I'm Mike, and today I want to talk to you about my time as a men's rights activist, how I slowly gave it up and became a feminist, and also the parts that came after that. I'm not going to get too specific in this video because we have a lot to cover, and this is my first video on this channel. So, here we go. Now, ever since I was really young, I have always noticed the differences between the sexes and how society generally treats them. When I was growing up, I always heard that rhyme, sugar and spice and all things nice, that's what little girls are made of. Slugs and snails and puppy dogs' tails, that's what little boys are made of. My father would always make a point of letting my sister go first if we needed to go to the toilet, or we were going to brush our teeth before bed. Never really gave that much of an explanation, he just said, because she's a girl. I would also see things on TV and just in the general world that, I don't know, I just picked up on them. So as I came into my early teens, I started to have a lot of insecurities, male-centric insecurities. I felt that I had it really bad in so many ways because I was male, and at the same time, I was also always told that girls have it worse in so many ways. When I was in primary school, which is the equivalent to elementary school, we had some people come around who tried to talk to us about something called tag rugby. For those of you who don't know, tag rugby is a sport that was invented to try and get girls into sport. One of the main features of tag rugby is that when the game is being played and your team is on the field, at least half of that team has to be girls. So this is what I'm getting at. I felt a lot of insecurity about me, stuff that I thought was very male-centric, and at the same time I was being told that women had it worse in almost every conceivable way. That was the impression that I was getting. As I grew older, I kept these insecurities with me and never really felt like I had an outlet. These bad feelings just kept compounding on each other, and I really didn't think that there was anyone who understood or cared. When I was at secondary school, which I suppose is the equivalent of high school, we had this thing called the WISE bus that arrived at our school. The WISE bus was basically a bus from an organisation called WISE, which stood for Women in Science and Engineering. And class by class, all the girls in our school got to go on this bus to try and get them into engineering and science. Us boys didn't seem to have a counterpart bus come round and try and help us out. So I went through primary school, secondary school, college, and eventually went on to university with all of these really bad feelings. When I went to university, I started watching a lot of YouTube videos about the differences between men and women. I don't really know why, I just was really interested in it because I'd always noticed these differences. Eventually, I stumbled upon the men's rights movement on YouTube, and I started watching a lot of videos by guys who called themselves MRAs, or men's rights activists. They were the only people that I'd ever seen who were talking from a specifically male perspective about specific male issues. I also saw a lot of videos from feminist YouTubers and just videos about feminism, and they all seemed to attack the very idea that men could suffer. I saw so many examples of female feminists talking about men's issues, men's experiences, men's behaviors from an obviously ignorant perspective. Ironically, I also watched a lot of videos that, at the time, convinced me that the issues feminists talk about aren't serious problems at all. I thought the wage gap was bullshit. I thought the concept of objectification of women was overblown and unimportant. I believe that overall, at least in Western society, women had never had it so good. And this kind of fueled my anger because there seemed to be a movement, a real powerful movement that was fighting for women, and the pressures and problems that I was experiencing seemed to just not matter, and there wasn't any discussion about those problems at all. I started seeing the men's rights movement as a real option for guys like me. And it wasn't long before I was calling myself an MRA. I was never like a huge figure in this men's rights community on YouTube, but I kept up to date with it. I watched the videos, I followed a lot of the big icons of that community. And for a while, that was pretty much who I was. I was an angry, insecure, probably depressed young man, and all I could think about was gender, feminism, and the men's rights movement. Now, all the while I was calling myself an MRA, I was having debates and discussions with my twin brother, Jacob. He disagreed with me on a lot of these issues, and Jacob being Jacob, He was always a very good debater. Jacob has always been able to effectively back up his points. And I wanted some of that. I wanted to be able to back up my points. I wanted to say, fuck you, Jacob, I'm right. Now, in order to do that, you need to do a lot of research. So I decided that for the first time, I was going to try to teach myself about feminism unbiasedly. I wanted to honestly research feminism and give it a fair trial, so to speak. This was the beginning of the end of my time as an MRA. I frequented websites like ExoJane, Feministing, The F Word, London Feminist Network, Jezebel. I tried to read about feminism. These are some of the books that I read. That's Feminism, A Very Short Introduction. We've got Women of the Revolution here, and a personal favourite of mine, I watched videos by feminist YouTubers. I particularly watched a lot of videos by Lacey Green. I talked to actual women about the issues that feminists seemed to care about. I even took a Women in Cinema module in my second year of university. I did all of this because I genuinely wanted to know if I was right. And what I discovered was that almost all of my opinions as an MRA about feminism and women's issues were coming from a position of cold, pallid ignorance. That is to say, that as a man talking about feminism and women's issues, I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. I realised that there is an entire world of problems and experiences that I am specifically protected from and kept unaware of because I am a man. I was born with a penis, I was raised as a boy, I grew into a man, I'm treated as a man, I'm viewed as a man, I walk through this world as a man. Because of this, what I know about being a woman is drastically limited. I had no idea that catcalling and street harassment were actual problems. I don't catcall, and I don't get catcalled. How was I supposed to know? I hadn't considered that women and girls were dealing with sexism within male-dominated fields like sport, technology, and the workplace at large. I didn't realise that girls and women were struggling so much with body image and objectification. At the same time that I was learning about and being convinced by the arguments of feminism, I was starting to see a lot of things in the men's rights movement that were disturbing, to say the least. This ideological shift that I was having took place towards the end of my time at university. So it was around this time that I decided that I was going to start calling myself a feminist. I did, however, still believe that there were countless significant men's rights issues that still needed to be addressed. So there was a period when I called myself a feminist MRA. Yeah. I struggled with this cognitive dissonance for a while. I didn't know exactly what I believed about the men's rights movement on YouTube, and I was slowly becoming more and more convinced that feminism as a movement was really, really effective at describing and tackling women's issues. And I was still suffering from all these horrible male-centric insecurities. It was an uncomfortable position to be in. This all came to a head in late 2014 when I was on holiday with my family in Scotland. I don't know what it is, but something about Scotland sparked a fundamental rethink of my gender political worldview. I was out one day with my family and I was thinking about all the things I've described thus far. I thought to myself, I don't agree with the majority of MRAs anymore, and my opinions have changed so much that calling myself an MRA was disingenuous and pointless. So I stopped. I remember that in the next few weeks, I realized that I had fully transitioned from an MRA to a feminist. I had even read articles by guys who had gone through the same thing that I had gone through, and I thought to myself at the time, that's not gonna be me, man. But it was. I was no longer an MRA, and I was now calling myself a feminist. I had defected, you might say. I felt kind of humiliated that I had been so wrong about so many things for so long, that I had believed some really stupid shit, and I was still feeling terrible about myself as a man. And I still felt that there were lots and lots of important men's issues being felt by other men all around the world. Logically, you might think that this is the part of the video where I start talking about how feminism is the movement that's going to change things for men, and that men need to start embracing feminism for their own sake. Well, You'd be wrong. This video is called From MRA to Feminist and Beyond. After all, I continue to learn about feminism, sexism, and gender. In particular, I started to read and watch material about how feminism related to men and masculinity. And they were still making mistakes. The feminists were still not getting it. I would watch feminist women talking about men's experiences in a way that made me think to myself, these people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. A lot of female feminists feel completely justified and don't seem to see any kind of problem with extrapolating from what they know about masculinity and making wild claims about what men's experiences really were and what men's lives are really like. After a while, I had a mini epiphany. Remember when I said that I was shocked by the amount of mistakes that I and my fellow MRAs were making when talking about women's issues? The issues that feminism principally tackles? And remember when I said that the main reason for this is because I am a man? Well, I realized that the reason why so many feminists made so many mistakes when talking about men and men's issues is because the vast amount of people who identify as feminists, and certainly feminist thinkers, authors, and activists, are women. As an MRA, I had made the mistake of thinking that I as a man could easily understand what women go through day to day. Feminists make exactly the same mistake when talking about men's issues because the vast majority of feminists are women. This is the beyond part of my story. I had renounced my MRA and I still identify as a feminist, but to be honest, I think that the only people that feminism really benefits are women. More to the point, I've come to the conclusion that this isn't actually a problem. This is how it should be. I cannot expect a movement that has always prioritized, consisted of, and fought for women to give men's issues the attention that they deserve. Women don't know what it's like to be men. I can't use a women's movement to tackle my own issues as a man. So, where does this leave me? What to do about men's issues if I believe that the current men's rights movement and feminism can't help men? Here's where I stand. I support an independent, non-anti-feminist men's rights movement. A movement that recognizes the inherent limitations that feminism has in relation to men's issues, while understanding that feminism's primary objective is not to help men, but women. This movement that I envision will communicate with feminism. It will learn from feminism. It will shake hands with feminism. But crucially, it will not be feminism. So that's it. That's my story, and that's my plan for the future. I hope you enjoyed it. I do hope you agree with me. If you don't, feel free to talk about it constructively in the comments. Subscribe for more men's rightsy videos, and prepare. Bye.